Hello, everybody, and welcome to Taking Control, the ADHD podcast on True Story FM. I'm Pete Wright, and I'm here with Nikki Kinzer.
Hello, everyone. Hello, Pete Wright.
Oh, my goodness, Nikki.
Oh, no.
It's cold now. The seasons have changed again.
I know. It really, it's weird how quickly it changes in Oregon.
Yeah.
One day it can be like 87, and then the next day it's like,
Yeah, it's like 50. Yeah, freezing.
Yeah.
My morning dog
And
walks.
raining.
I'm bundling up now. I have to bundle.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So break out the fleeces, and I find this is another one of those context shifts. Like when I have to start thinking about my temperature again, like my own body temperature, it
Right.
is a distraction. Like I am
for sure.
distracted by like getting my house to the right temperature and do it. Like that's just who I am.
Well,
and
I don't know about you, but like right now, it's like it's hard to get it to the right temperature because it's either cold or too warm.
Yeah.
And there isn't any happy place. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's exactly where it is. Do we
weird.
open a window? I don't want to open a window. Like
I don't know,
there's a wet breeze constantly. So
Exactly.
that's where we are, and that's what brings us into our conversation today. Why are some tasks so hard to do? Before we dig in, head over to TakeControlADHD.com. You can get to know us a little bit better. You can listen to the show there on the website or subscribe to the mailing list right there on the homepage, and we will send you an email each time a new episode is released. Connect with us on Twitter or Facebook at TakeControlADHD, and if this show has ever touched you or helped you make a change in your life for the better, if you've ever found that you understand your relationship with ADHD in a new way, please consider hopping over to patreon.com/theADHDpodcast. For a few bucks a month, you can support us there, and that helps us grow the show and continue to do new things. And in that regard, we are on the cusp of doing a new thing. But we actually literally need your help to do it because, producing a podcast isn't free. There comes a cost in terms of just mechanical costs, production costs, time costs, and we want to launch a new podcast. And that podcast is going to be Podcast Pete's podcast on PADHD. It's all P words. And
PADHD.
we did the math and we tried to figure out what is it that we need to do this, and we came down to a number of members as our goal. And if you go to patreon.com/theADHD podcast, you can see our goal is 250. When we hit 250, we will have what we need to be able to support doing 2 podcasts. And so if that has ever been like it's just the math that we're trying to figure out. We need to have 250 supporting members to be able to release this new podcast. And so it's not like we're teasing, it's not like we're holding out on it. It's just that as soon as we hit that, we'll have the resources that we've calculated we need to be able to do this new thing. And that's how all of our goals work. So if you've been on the fence, if 9 of you have been on the fence as of today, this number fluctuates a little bit, but it is right now, as we're recording this, it's 9 members, 9 people who need to make the leap and decide that they are ready to join our community, join our Discord server, get access to the super secret channels on Discord and our fantastic community, get access to the live stream so you can hear Pete talk about all the laundry that he does when he cleans up his daughter's room while he's crying because he's weeping that she went to college.
He's so sad.
He's so sad. You can hear all that stuff in the live stream that you don't get on the main show, and we just invite you to do that. Help us out. Help us handily cross that 250 and launch Pete's new podcast, Podcasting on ADHD with Pete. So that's the whole title.
I kind of like that.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm
It's
digging that.
long. It's
Yeah.
going to be an acronym. Don't worry about it.
So, couple of things before we get into this. Are you all done with your thing?
No, am I ever?
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
I'm exhausted.
I'm sure you probably need
I need a break.
you need a break, from talking. But a couple things I want to let people know. We are going into October, which means it is ADHD Awareness Month. And in my world, it's every month is ADHD Awareness Month.
And
every
how?
week is ADHD week. And every Tuesday when this goes live is like ADHD Tuesday. Right? So, but I do love the idea of bringing awareness to ADHD. And one of the ways that I want to help promote that is I am offering 25% off of my online courses. So there's 3 different ones to choose from. One is organizing time, one is organizing space, and then the other one is about organizing paper. So we'll put the links in the show. And if you are interested in checking out one or more of those online courses, they will be 25% off through October 31st. 2021. So if you're listening to this in 2024, which you might be, maybe they'll be on sale then
It'll be
too, because
another
it's
break.
October.
Yeah,
But
right.
but just want to be clear with the dates. And then two more things that are happening in November that I will probably continue to talk about in the next few shows. One is GPS is going to be starting up again. I believe the first Monday of November, which I believe is November 1st. So that will be our next round of workshops. So if you're interested in doing some guided planning with me and other people who struggle with planning, please check that out because that is coming up the next session. And then the last thing I want to talk about really quick is study hall. We are still going to be holding study hall on Thursday afternoons, the same time as it always has been. If you are a Supreme Discord member, you get study hall for free. So that's something to think about. Not only Pete's podcast, Pete ADHD, but you also get Nikki's study hall, right? So that's cool.
We need to rebrand your study hall. We need an epic name. I'm gonna workshop it. That's all right.
Yeah,
Intern,
you workshop that.
make a note.
But my point here is that we're going to be changing the way that we do the study halls, and it's going to be a monthly service. So if you're interested in joining me on one Thursday or all Thursdays, it will be a monthly fee, and you'll get that link. And then you can also still do pay as you go as well. So just want to throw that out there, that those are a couple of things that are happening in November. I think we're done. We're done with announcements.
Nikki's Epic Study Hall. Oh, yeah.
Oh, that sounds good.
It's going to be great. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about tasks.
So this is the thing. A while ago.
Oh, is this where you introduce how you completely pulled the rug out from under me and changed the topic at the very last minute for this week?
Yes.
Is this that part where you own up to that?
Yes. I'm going to own up to that.
Awesome.
Because originally this topic was going to be, how do I talk about my ADHD? But then I started to think about the outline and where did I want to go with that? And I had some ideas, and that still might be something, to talk about later. But this is what was screaming at me. In the last couple of weeks, I have had at least 5 different people, 5 different situations that I worked with as clients, where part of our call was actually dedicated to doing a task during our session. And it was a task that they were avoiding, maybe had a little bit of shame around it, or they were embarrassed. And it was a toleration, right, Pete? We remember tolerations, or it was nagging at them.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so when I started thinking about what to talk about and what to kind of how to start October ADHD Awareness Month, you got to listen to the universe. And when something comes to you in 5 different ways in the last 10 days, you got to pay attention to that. And that's where we come to, why is it that some tasks are so hard to do? And I just want to share with you some of the things that I did with my clients during their calls. One was my client sent a text to a friend about not going on a future trip. Not an easy thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Another client sent an email to a coworker letting them know that they weren't going to get something that they were expecting. Not an easy thing to do.
No.
Worked with a client on getting a contract signed and buying postage online. We actually went in and bought the postage online while I was there with him, and got the envelope all ready to go. And he mailed it right after our call, and then sent me a text and said, "It's done." And we're like, "Yay!"
That's awesome.
Big, huge celebration. Yeah. And then I've also had a client who physically, we were planning his the rest of his week, and so we were looking at the to-do list, talking about the to-do list, talking about his calendar, and basically we sat for at least a half hour, really just planning the next 3 days. And then I had another client who, after we did the session, she took the last part of our session, about 20 minutes, to just clean her house. She just wanted to clear the clutter.
When
And
nothing else could jump in and distract.
no, and I was just on her computer and I was on, it was kind of like a little study hall, just the two of us. And
Yeah.
I was working and she was working. And then, she would tell me what she did and all that, but it was great. And she got to clean up her house. And then there was this last client, she had to write a refund check to a client. And that was really past due. So there was a
Mhm.
lot of embarrassment and kind of like, oh, it's already like so late.
Yeah.
But she wrote the check in front of me and put it in the envelope, got the stamp ready, and she sent it after a call. So, I mean,
Just
these were great things.
knocking those clogging tasks right out of the park.
Yes. And, over my experience with coaching, I could share with you so many more examples, of this, of when this happens, because
Mhm.
sometimes coaching isn't just talking, but it's also the doing part. And some of these things are perfect for that
Mhm.
because it only takes a few minutes. But I also want to share with you a couple things I noticed. Out of these examples that I'm sharing with you, only 2 clients accepted my help without being embarrassed.
Mm.
And I'll tell you, I think that is because we've done it enough in the past that they kind of got over that, like, okay, she's not going to care. I just need to get through this.
Yeah.
So they didn't really question the process. But the other 4 made at least one, if not more, comments that was not a very positive self-talking conversation. So if you think about last week, we talked about, you know, positive self-talk and getting away from negative. And unfortunately, in this situation, not positive.
Yeah.
I had 2 people tell me that they felt like a child. They felt like they were 5 years old again and having to have their hand held.
Mhm.
I had one person tell me that she just couldn't believe that it took her this long to do something that was so easy and done within just like a couple of minutes, a few
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I wanted to do with all of these folks and to the people listening who I just know you're shaking your head like, yes, I get this. This stuff is really difficult. I wanted to reassure each client that, there is nothing wrong with them and that this is the ADHD. It's how the ADHD is affecting them, that these things are really hard and that they have nothing to be ashamed of, nothing to be embarrassed about. And I really wanted them to focus on what they were doing, what was the task or what was the action step that they were doing to get forward on this. So we were really trying to focus more on just the future and not what was going on in the past. And each one of these things that got accomplished, we celebrated. I mean,
Mhm.
I was clapping, and man, if I could have like thrown confetti at them, I would have,
Yeah.
you know, because we wanted to really I wanted to highlight what a big deal it was. And I wanted them to feel really good about what they did. And I had a couple of people who told me later how great it was to have, such a burden taken off of them. And they were really grateful for my help. A couple of people said, thank you for pushing me to just do it. I don't think I would have done this today without your help. Thanks so much, Nikki. With your help today ended much better than it started.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes to this question of our day, right? Why are some tasks so hard to do?
Have you thought about just like going to their house and throwing confetti at them? I mean, I think at first it might be creepy, but it could be on brand.
Well, one's in the UK, so I think that would be hard,
Okay, I'm sure we could. There's got to be like an Uber Eats for confetti throwers, right? We
right?
should
There
start
should
that.
be.
Yes. Yes. It's a
I
gig
like
economy
that.
celebrant. That's what we need. All right.
Yeah.
I've been thinking a lot about this as I was reflecting on our topic for the day, and I wanted to do a quick review of these things we've talked about these kind of individually before, but these thought distortions. I just want to remind people why their brains might be making it harder to do things in spite of your best interests of getting them done. And it's because we're wired this way, right? We have to
Mm-hmm.
overcome our own lizard brain. And so, we'll call these the thought distortions. And I just love this kind of list that some of these things will sound familiar. The first is all or nothing thinking. Absolutely. It's a fan
Mm-hmm.
favorite, all or nothing thinking. It's binary thinking, either this or that. I'm either good or bad. It's either all or nothing. That's number one. Mind reading. Oh, we do this all the time, right?
Oh,
Where we assume what others will think of us, right? People will think I'm dumb, slow, a terrible person if I can't finish this task, whatever the task is, right? People will think, like, what people are thinking. You don't know what they're thinking. You don't know what they're
yeah.
thinking.
You really don't.
Unhelpful rules. This is an interesting one to me, where you assign yourself strict rules that don't help you achieve your goals, right? I must complete this task using a blue pen. If I don't have a blue pen, this task is not worth completing, right?
Yeah.
The blue pen could be anything, right? Assigning yourself a rule that determines how you do a thing that doesn't help you actually get the thing done is a form of a thought distortion that you can shake off. You can shake those off. Labeling. This is another kind of variant of all or nothing thinking, right? It's this
Mm-hmm.
idea that we're reducing a complex idea to a simple single characteristic. ADHD makes me distracted. Well,
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's a part of it, but it does other things too, right? There are other components to it that make ADHD a complicated spectrum
Yes,
disorder. So let's
absolutely.
try to catch ourselves when when we're acting in that sort of reductive nature, because it's not good for us. And it makes complicated things too easy to shut down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because of this
Mm-hmm.
one thing, the way I've labeled it, I've created a straw man that's really easy for me to buckle under the pressure. Fortune telling is another form of mind reading, right?
Yeah.
Predicting the future. If I blow this project, I'll never be asked to do another project again. If I don't get my taxes in on time, I'll, be arrested and I'll go away. I'll never see my family again. Like, whatever it is, like, you don't know the future. You don't know the future. So let's stop
Dang.
predicting the worst. What?
I want to be a fortune teller. No, I the reason I say that is because it's not the ADHD. It for me, obviously, it's the anxiety,
Sure. These
of
things are hand
just
in hand.
wanting to have some idea of what's going to happen. So yeah, I
Yeah.
really relate to that.
Well, and the last
And the
one,
exaggerated
yeah,
thinking. Yeah,
exaggerated
for
thinking, right?
sure.
When we are making something bigger than it actually is. Like, oh, I got to work late this morning. I guess the rest of my day is blown.
Right.
That's not
Oh,
true.
yeah. Yeah.
Dry off, take off the raincoat, get a cup of coffee, take a few deep breaths, and just see how the day plays out. It's not
Hmm.
over just because this one thing went wrong. That's exaggerated
Hmm.
thinking. So, all or nothing thinking, mind reading, unhelpful rules that you assign yourself, labeling, fortune telling, and exaggerating thinking. Those are, I think, foundational to this understanding of the stories we tell ourselves and the tricks our brains
Absolutely.
play on us that get into why tasks are so
Are
hard
so
for us
hard.
sometimes.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So, one of the other things I want us to highlight and add to what you're talking about with thought distortions is executive functions.
Yeah.
How do executive functions play into getting a task done? And this is something that I looked up, and this is from Dr. Russell Barkley, and this is sort of his definition of what executive functions, what that is, what it means. And let me just read this to you because I cannot memorize something like this. Uh, executive function is the cognitive process that organizes thoughts and activities. Okay. Prioritizes tasks, manages time efficiently, and makes decisions. Executive function skills are the skills that help us establish structures and strategies for managing projects and determine the actions required to move each project forward. Individuals with executive dysfunction often struggle to analyze, plan, organize, schedule, and complete tasks at all or on a deadline. They misplace materials, prioritize the wrong things, and get overwhelmed by big projects. Well, that
Okay.
sounds like
Yeah.
ADHD.
Sounds like
And
he's watching me.
yeah, and it also, I hope, gives people an understanding that not only are your thoughts getting in your way of how you're seeing this, but real, true executive functions are challenged when you have ADHD, which also makes these things so hard.
Yeah, I think to that point, it can turn into a self-defeating loop, right? Your executive functions directly relate to these thought distortions, right?
Right,
It's
right.
when you are struggling with executive function that the thought distortions rear their heads. They're like, "Oh, look at me. Now I'm going to start telling you stories because clearly you're struggling with planning and prioritizing. So, it's time for me to start labeling and fortune telling and exaggerating." So,
Hmm.
they really can become that sort of deflationary spiral that leads
Yes.
to real sadness and frustration with ADHD if you can't recognize them up front.
Right, right.
Yeah. So I was listening to this interview. There's a great conversation on the Focused podcast with Jesse J. Anderson, who's a coder and a writer about ADHD and all things ADHD, and really smart, like coming at it from a professional perspective. And he reminded me of this quote that I haven't heard in years, but it's all about eating the frog, right? The
Hmm.
eat the frog Mark Twain quote: eat a live
And Brian
frog.
Tracy has a book
Yeah,
about it.
he sure
Yeah.
does. Eat a live frog first thing in the morning, and nothing worse will happen to you for the rest of the day. That doesn't work for
Nope.
ADHD, right? You can't, if you start eating the frog, you won't do stuff. Like you won't get anything done because your brain isn't warmed up, right? There are all kinds
Well,
of
that and
reasons.
you won't eat the
You
frog.
won't
Like
eat the,
you may
exactly.
have it may be on your to-do list, but you're not doing
You're
it.
not
So,
doing it. So this is why I wanted to bring this up here as a kind of pivot, because I think
yes.
that mentality, if that's what you've been told all your life about productivity, about work, about if that's the Brian Tracy mantra at your office, it's
Hmm.
time to challenge that, because putting a live frog on your task list first thing in the morning is manufacturing clogging tasks that you're not going to do.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Well, and one of the things that I'll tell people, it's the difference between being Tigger and Eeyore, going into a task. If
Oh,
you, right?
yeah.
Like if you go and try to eat that frog and you haven't done anything to warm up your brain or be excited or energized,
Hmm.
is what I meant to say. You're going to go in like Eeyore.
Yeah.
Oh, here
And
I
then I
go
stepped in
again.
poo. Yeah.
I don't want to do this, right? And then, but if you want to go in as Tigger, play a favorite song, do something like play with your dog, get a little bit of exercise in, get your energy up, get that dopamine flowing so that you do feel like you can take something on. And then you're Tigger.
Yeah.
Because then you're like, I can do anything for 5 minutes. I can do anything I can get started on this for the next, half hour. I can make that, I can write that email,
Yeah. I'm
and
fun, fun,
so
fun,
it's
fun, fun.
I am fun. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So I totally when I first read this, Pete, I thought you were gonna say to eat the frog first. And I was like, oh no, we're
Yeah.
gonna get in
No,
a fight.
no, no fights. I just, it actually, I find it so infuriating, right? That
Yeah, I
thinking,
do
I
too.
find it absolutely infuriating and kind of disrespectful. Right. And
Yeah,
and I think
yeah,
that's, like, I don't know, maybe it's just I'm getting older, and like I really bought it when I was 25, but I
yeah.
didn't know a lot about myself when I was 25.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, and one other thing that I think is really important to point out about these tasks, and I sort of started to mention it when I was talking about how they were talking to me about them, and that is the emotional self regulation piece
Mhm.
of ADHD. So, looking for a formal definition, this is the ability to take these executive functions and use them to manipulate your own emotional state. So, this means learning to use words, images, and your own self awareness to process and alter how we feel about things. So, what does that mean or have to do with getting tasks done? Well, in all of the examples I used above and with other clients, some emotion is tied up to not doing the task. And if we don't actually like identify it and see what it is, it's going to be even harder for you to get it done because you're really avoiding it. You're really kind of in denial of it, right? You're not facing it.
Mhm.
And for a lot of these situations or examples that I talked about earlier, they were afraid of letting people down. The result of the conversation that needed to be said, like for the text message and the email, there wasn't a choice. We knew they were going to be probably let down. So we talked about that. Like, it doesn't matter if you do it today or if you do it next week. You may run, you may let someone down. And so what does that mean? But if we don't do it now, it's going to feel worse and
Yeah.
worse and worse. And so we talked it through, and was she was able to do that. Embarrassment because of being late with the communication. Like if you haven't been communicating or talking to people or updating them, that can really take a toll on you, right? That embarrassment just does not help with the taking action. Overwhelmed with the amount of steps. Some of these things that I talk to clients about, there's a lot more steps to it than you really think there is. And then once you start breaking that down, you realize, oh my, this of course this is hard because there's like 5 or 6 different components to it, and it can't all be done in 10 minutes. So I do think it's important to see how you're feeling about this, and again, understanding that this is part of the ADHD and the thoughts distortion that you're talking about,
Hmm.
the emotional self-regulation. It's not about you being lazy or not caring. And I think that's something I really want people to walk away from is, this is about ADHD awareness. And I hope that they're more aware of why these tasks are so hard.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about one strategy, and it's the only strategy that I'm going to talk about today. Are you ready,
I'm
Pete?
ready. Yeah.
It is to ask for help.
Sure.
So many people uh, will not ask for help because of all of these emotions that they feel. And it's really too bad because I know how good it felt for these folks to do what they got done, to get done what they got done. And I don't want anyone to miss out on that.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. Fan I can't talk.
You're
It
doing
was
great.
fantastic.
Yeah.
So, how do you ask for help? Ask someone that you trust, someone that you do not feel like you are being judged, because that's going to be really important. Body double with someone. If you have not done body doubling, either through my study hall, somebody else's study hall, or just with a friend or coworker, try it. Really try it. Tell them that this is what I'm working on today, and cheer me on at the end. Let's celebrate. And I want to be the same for you too. So, you're not only asking for someone to help you, you're offering your own help and say, "Hey, I want to be a coach to you too. I want to
Hmm.
cheer you on." And that's really I think important. And ask for help. And I know this sounds a lot easier than it is, but ask for help without shame or embarrassment, and don't apologize for asking for the help. I think that's the biggest thing. I don't want you to say, "I'm so sorry, Pete. I need you to body double with me today. Is that going to be okay?" No,
No.
no. I mean, you
Well,
don't need to
for so many
apologize.
reasons. Like, first, you're already asking a welcome community, right? You're asking a
Right.
group of people who also know the value of body doubling and have no
Yes.
problem doing that. But the other thing I would add there is, you. It takes a while to figure out how to feel good about these things and make it stick. Like, I wouldn't
Right.
be surprised at all after hearing your stories of the people you're working with if you ask them today about another clogging task that might have shown up, if they don't feel exactly the same sort of
Yep.
fear, uncertainty, doubt, right? About this new
Yes.
task that they did about that old one, because it takes practice to feel good. And so asking for help, asking for that kind of support, it's okay no matter where you are in the process. No matter, there is
Absolutely.
no shame. It takes
Absolutely.
time.
Well, and something you mentioned that I think is really important is do find an ADHD community, because uh, that is going to help you. It's going to make a huge difference to be with your tribe, to be with people who already understand you. You don't have to explain it. You don't have to apologize. You trust, and you're not going to get any judgment. And so if you're not really sure if you can ask somebody at work, or I've never really thought that spouses and partners are really great they're good body doubles, but they're
Yes.
not great accountability partners.
That's
So
what my wife says to me. Would you just sit there and look pretty? That's all she says to me. And
yeah,
I'm like, yeah, okay. It's a
okay,
natural
I can
resting
do that.
space for me. That's fine.
Yeah,
Shut up and look pretty, Pete.
that's right.
That's the name
But
of the podcast.
sit up and look pretty.
Shut
or
up
sit
and look
down?
pretty, Pete.
Shut up and look pretty, Pete. Oh gosh.
Another one on the list.
There you go. Another one for us to look at. In any case, whether you're listening to Shut Up and Be Pretty Pete podcast, or you're on, you're listening to us, think about joining our Patreon community. We have a great community, and there are other resources too. If you want to look at Ada, you want to look at Chad, there's all these other podcasts that have communities, other websites. I mean, they're there. So we just have to find something that works with you and that you connect with. And I think you'd be surprised that it's not going to be as hard to get tasks done when you are in a community like that you can help and you can ask for help without shame.
Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us. Thanks for doing your part to help others and help yourself along the way. We really appreciate it. Thank you for downloading and listening to this show. Thank you for your time and your attention. Don't forget, if you have something to contribute to this conversation, we're heading over to the Show Talk channel in our Discord server, and you can join us right there by becoming a supporting member at the deluxe level. On behalf of Nikki Kinzer, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll see you right back here next week on Taking Control, the ADHD podcast. Or maybe Shut Up and Look Pretty with Pete Wright. I can't wait. Thanks, everybody.